Welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neal Howard, and I'm glad that you could join us today. Our guests in studio today are Debbie and Norman Compton, and they're joining us here on the program to discuss their recently released book, Stacking, Your Skeletal Blueprint for Posture. They're also going to talk about their unique approach to fitness and give us a little insight into what it is they do, where they do it, and who they do it for, kind of introducing a new discipline in fitness. Welcome to the program, both Debbie and Norm. How are you both today?
Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning, and thank you very much for allowing us on your show.
Now, you two are fitness powerhouses. You've been at it for quite a while. And Norm, why don't you give our listeners just a little bit of background about yourself to show just how varied your background is?
Yeah, okay. I'm born and raised in a town called Kailua, and on the island of Oahu in the great state of Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And while living there, I've always been active, in all the sports from football, soccer, baseball, and that's the nice thing about our age of people growing up is that back then we didn't just hone in on one sport. When you were 8 years old, you played a lot of sports. You didn't just play a sport.
Mm-hmm.
But and then I met Debbie while in Hawaii, and I was only 20 years old at the time, and she was just graduated from college, and we went on our first date. She was visiting Hawaii and never left.
Wow.
You know,
quite an impact,
Yeah.
huh, Norm? Yeah.
I was really smooth at 20.
Absolutely. Little did she know.
So
Right?
is the running.
Yeah. But one of the things, yes, little did she know. But one of our first date that we did is kind of interesting because it really comes all the way back to our book here. But our first date that we did, we went jogging around in Waikiki around a park called Kapiolani Park, and I noticed that while we were jogging, that her feet were not pointed like a jogger would point their feet, which is towards where they were running. She was pointing her feet like a ballerina would point her feet out towards the side.
Yeah.
And I knew that something was going to happen to her knees if she didn't correct that. And so our first date, it was me trying to correct her feet. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just saying that it needs to go this way because this is how we run.
He thought it looked funny.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought it looked
But I was a ballerina. I'd grown up in dance classes since a young girl. So, yes, that influenced me, and it gave us a lot of insight of how life can shape us, even from childhood.
The thing is that when I first saw, we went to the beach, and then when I saw her feet, she had like beautiful feet. You know, it's just that they were pointed in the wrong direction.
I took it well.
But after a while, and then I became a stuntman in the movie industry. On Magnum PI when that started filming. I used to be a performer in Hawaii, where I had a group and we'd do all the popular songs of the time. As a matter of fact, the place I sang at was owned by the Denver Broncos. The owner of the Denver Broncos, Mr. Pat Boland, and he owned a restaurant in Hawaii that I sang at. And while singing there, Tom Selleck used to come in on a nightly basis, and we became friends, and we started playing softball against each other, and they saw that I was a good athlete, and they asked me if I'd be interested in getting into a fight with Tom on Magnum PI. I said, sure, why not?
Yeah, I can't pass
well, anyway,
that.
I did. Yeah, right. I ended up doing about 20 episodes with Magnum PI, and we became real good friends. I got to know his whole family, his parents and his brothers, and they all came to Hawaii to visit. And then we decided to get more serious about that and move here to L.A. And while in L.A., while I was trying to become a serious stuntman, my wife and I both, while she was looking for something to do, we both got certified. And she started taking it real serious while I was trying to take the stunt work a little more serious.
Were you interested in fitness and health before you got your feet analyzed by your future husband, or was that something that you had been thinking about? Yeah.
No, I had always found it very interesting, intriguing, and just how the body functioned and moved. And in college, my electives would always be something like, gymnastics or something, just because I always wanted to be physically aware. So yes, I found it intriguing that he pointed that out about my feet, and I took it on as a challenge.
But then I took it in a totally different direction. You know, back in those days, we used to lift at our gym. We did what we called the football lifts, which was the big three, which is bench press, squats, and power clean. Mm-hmm. And her never ever lifting weights before, and me not knowing any other lifts, that's what I taught her how to lift. So that's her first lift, was learning how to do the squats, the power cleans, and
bench press.
Yeah.
And I loved it. You know, you either get this and find it intriguing to understand how your body functions, or you don't. Mm-hmm. And so we're hoping that when we present things very simplistic and I guess
in a
just
fun kind of way,
everyday language instead of science language, mm-hmm. it'll make people be more interested. But I started out also just teaching aerobic classes. In the 80s, that was a big thing, and so I would teach that.
Actually, Debbie was the first personal trainer in
yes.
Hawaii.
Is that right?
No one else was doing. Yeah, no one else was doing it, and somebody actually started paying her. And she actually she was worked out with was a trainer for Sylvester Stallone's wife, Sasha.
Wow.
His first wife. Yeah.
They came to Hawaii
That's how far back we go. We were good friends. The Stallones and us were good friends when we were in Hawaii.
So this book, Stacking, Your Skeletal Blueprint for Posture, you said that your analysis of Debbie's feet would kind of lead up to the writing of this book. Talk about this book and its intriguing title. What exactly is stacking?
Well, you know, what it was is that Debbie and I, we've had to come up with a process in order for us to get our bodies. And we were mainly focused on us. And it just so happens that Debbie was working with people that had special needs. And whatever we did for us seemed to work for them. And whenever we were, I was injured in a stunt or any, we would start with our process that Debbie had been using. And it would be starting at the feet. Our feet are the most important thing. And you know what's interesting is that how little attention is paid to the feet. But the feet are the number one thing on every endeavor or any adventure, any sport that we do. The feet are the number one thing to touch the ground. Absolutely. Everything else is a distant second. And if have you ever been into a gym and seen anybody doing footwork, just feet? No.
So that's...
Yeah, we're asking our feet to carry our bodies. We're asking them to put shoes on first off, and then carry our bodies to walk on cement, to walk on the ground, walk on all these different things. And then when you have to pick something up, we're loading it even more. And so we're willing to do chest, and we're willing to do arms, and we're willing to do everything. But our feet are actually the ones that are doing the work.
And the safety of every joint above it is depending on the feet being level and strong.
If you think of it as as your house, and let's say that you like in California, you had an earthquake and the foundation was broken. Well, you couldn't just build on that house again, on that foundation, until you fixed it. And so our whole thing is, let's start at the feet and let's build a strong skeleton on the way up. Let's get our feet strong first, and then let's stack on top of it correctly. And when we stack, that's when all the bones fall into their pockets, and they see that correct spot, and when all the ligaments are at their exact length. So now we're living in a pain-free zone. When you're strong there, in that pain-free zone, we call that neutral. When you're strong in neutral, you're strong everywhere.
Well, we'd like to get a copy of your book. Where can we go online and get a copy of Stacking, Your Skeletal Blueprint for Posture?
We are on Amazon, and we also are available on Kindle, ebooks, and Barnes & Noble.
Yeah. Everywhere on the ebooks, everywhere that's on the internet. Great. And we do our lecture workshops all over time. Right now, we just finished one at Torrance Memorial Hospital for the Dental Hygienists Association, and so we're just now, stepping outside of the box and looking at what's what's a possibility for us.
Right. Well, I appreciate you coming in and speaking with me today, both Debbie and Norman Compton, discussing their recently released book, Stacking Your Skeletal Blueprint for Posture, and giving us some insight into their very unique approach to fitness. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you, Neal.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neal Howard. Transcripts and audio of this program are available at healthprofessionalradio.com.au and also at hpr.fm. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, listen in and download at SoundCloud, and be sure and visit our affiliates page at healthprofessionalradio.com.au.